TSN Hockey Insider Darren Dreger in studio for the first time in a long time with us. You were in with Lisa Lunch a couple of days ago.
Cat lover.
Cat lover.
Am I the first to make the parade through, the tour through this week, or has Bob been?
LeBron was in here. Pierre was in here before he flew to Chicago.
Okay.
Bobby doesn't fire up until October, I don't think.
No.
What's he up to these days? He sat down with Dubas, I guess. But.
Yeah, doing big-time interviews with general managers, selling houses, doing the things that Bob normally does.
What was the reasoning behind Dubas, out of nowhere, day after Labor Day, deciding to do the tour?
Yeah, it was
what was the reasoning?
Maybe just a whisker early. I mean, Bob has done the sit-down interview with Kyle the last couple of seasons, and he
does the whole Canadian teams, right?
He did.
He used to. I don't know if he does them all anymore. I mean, come on. No.
There's only so much you can ask.
There's only so much you can ask of the man.
Especially, this is his mail-it-in year, isn't it?
Well, you're not supposed to say that.
Wow. Whatever.
I think he said it on the show
I think he
before.
actually, he may have finished last season with that exact
Okay, so
line.
if that's the case, every time we're on location with Bob, we have to symbolize that this is the farewell tour. So there should be some sort of presentation or acknowledgement.
Who was it, Kobe, that got a motorcycle and everywhere they went?
Jeter did it, Rivera did it.
You know what I mean? Everywhere they went, they had a ceremony for... Well, we might have to do that.
Well, he doesn't go on too many locations, I mean...
No, he picks the good ones. Like, he'll find his way to Boca Raton in March, of course, for general managers meetings. He doesn't do the December meetings because that's beneath him, and the location doesn't justify his time.
Well, what do you think the chances are this March in Boca? He just said, well, his place isn't close to Boca, right? He's got a place down there.
Yeah.
He would say, boys, just stay at my place.
No, he's not going to say that. He might be at his place, but he's not inviting us to go to his place to hang out. No, that's for sure not happening.
So, Board of Governors meetings. When do those happen? Are those the ones in...
Yeah, we've got one coming up in New York City, I believe the 17th of this month.
Okay, so that would be after the NHLPA has to decide whether or not...
To reopen
the CBA.
Yeah.
What's your read on this whole situation?
Well, it seems a little bit too nice for me, a little too lovey-dovey.
But you're jaded like everyone else that's covered
only
right?
through experience of standing on street corners in Manhattan at 3 o'clock in the morning. But look, I mean, on a weekly basis anyway, talk to both sides, and both sides feel pretty comfortable with how the discussions have gone. And to some degree, there has been a level of negotiations. No one was surprised by the NHL declining its opportunity to reopen on September 1st. And I think that the Players Association will do the same, and they'll decline on the 15th of September. Where it gets a little bit more problematic is, okay, once you get beyond that, are you realistically looking at an extension, and what might that extension look like? And, you know, they're into some of the heavy lifting elements of that negotiation. So I think to make a prediction as to, okay, if the PA says we're not reopening, should we assume that there's going to be an extension announced fairly soon after is a bit of a stretch to me based on the dialogue that I'm having with some clubs.
Do you think this RFA stuff would come up in any of these conversations? Like, is that a big enough item for the league, I would assume, to say, we got to figure this out, man.
Yeah.
Like, they got that media tour going down in Chicago. None of them are there, clearly, because they're not under contract.
Right. So in answer to your question, would it be brought up? Yeah. Has it been talked about? No question. Is it a deal maker or breaker? I don't think so. I don't think it's a big enough front burner issue, because at the end of the day, the clubs put themselves in those situations. You know, again, I get pummeled on social media, which I could give a rat's you-know-what.
We haven't noticed.
But, you know, as great as I think Auston Matthews is, and deserving of the money, Toronto didn't have to give him a 5-year term, right? They could have held his feet to the fire a little bit. They didn't have to give Nylander the deal when they gave him the deal. They could have buckled him and made him sit for the remainder of the year, and now Mitch Marner's the whipping boy for whatever reason, rightfully or unjustly so. That's just the way it is. So there is a layer of responsibility that belongs to the owners and the general managers, and I think the league recognizes that.
I'd say whipping boy is a little bit aggressive. I don't think that they're...
Well, he's taking heat, Marner, right now, but...
Well, it's frustration.
More in the public eye.
It's a public eye. It's frustration heat.
Just because a negotiation isn't going as smoothly as any, I don't think whipping boy is necessarily...
Well, not by the organization, but I would say from a fan perspective. Now, maybe it's, again, fair or unfair to say that the people that seem to be the most viral on social media maybe are the underbelly and aren't the true Toronto Maple Leafs fan. And I don't know that. What does it matter? It's just the guy doesn't have a contract. And because he doesn't have a contract, we're going to continue to find ways to justify why he doesn't have a contract or why he should have a contract based on, Matthews or, Clayton Keller signed his 8-year extension with the Arizona Coyotes and go down the list from there. But that doesn't just apply to Toronto. That applies to, all the other teams who are dealing with their RFAs. So there's no doubt that it is a topic of conversation. But as I said, I don't believe it's a deal breaker. But I did have someone, club-related, man of significance and influence in the National Hockey League, say to me the other day, what if we change the deadline for the RFAs from December 1st to September 15th? If you're not signed by the start of training camp thereabouts, you're ineligible for the rest of the year. And that's not just
things moving.
That's not just punitive on the player. That puts the onus on the team as well. You got to get your act together and get your stuff going. You can't drift through the summer, the off season, and through training camp. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but it's worth discussing. I think the bigger issue in terms of the talking, the negotiating, the collective bargaining agreement is what we've seen as a trend now. That's the front-loaded, heavy signing bonus contracts. How do you change that? How do you fix it? I don't know, but that is a legitimate piece of horse trading between the PA and the league.
We talked about it yesterday. Matthews got a check for 15-2 on July 1st, and he gets another one for 15-2.
But there's only like a handful of teams in the league that will do that.
That can do it, yeah.
So this is where it gets complicated for me, because from an RFA perspective, I got to believe whether it's the league or the players, they sit there and they say, listen, it's 50-50 and we got a hard cap.
Right.
Like, so the money's going somewhere. It's not like we're circumventing our own system in terms of the amount of money we can give to these young guys.
Right.
There's only so much we can possibly give. The signing bonus stuff, I mean, I understand Arizona would complain about it. Probably Columbus would complain about it. But at what
Ottawa,
point?
I mean, there are lots of teams who don't have the cash flow to sustain.
But at what point would the
you look
Leafs,
at that.
the Rangers, Boston say, dude, we gave you guys your salary cap. We didn't need that either. Like, the Leafs don't like having a salary cap. Why would they?
No.
So, I mean, that to me would be a brawl behind the scenes.
I thought about this last night, and it's never going to happen again.
But that's internal fighting. I don't know if that's the players.
But it wasn't that long ago there wasn't a salary cap. Like, it was, I got traded to the Rangers. Was that, whatever it was.
15 years ago.
Okay, 15 years ago. That's when Glenn Sather was trading. He was dumping salary. He had like an $83 million payroll.
Oh, yeah.
Back then. Bobby Holik was making $9 million. Messier was
Billy
was left,
Guerin,
and then
Doug
Billy
Waite, go down
he
the
went
list.
right down the league.
Yeah.
The league. There was no salary cap, and Sather was saying in Edmonton, crying poor. Oh, if you gave me no, New York.
Then he moved to New York.
Doesn't
he went
win
to New York and tried to buy a team and couldn't do it.
So who is the source of complaint there? Is it the teams? Like, is it the players? Why would they complain about signing bonuses?
The teams. No, I mean, if you're a player,
you love it, right?
Well, for the most part, you love it. For sure, you would. And frankly, the team that I talked to about this, I was surprised that they would have a concern with it, because I would lump this team in with the higher spending and more wealth among the NHL clubs. But, how big of a deal is that? Who knows?
Right.
I don't get the sense from talking with both sides that there's a burning issue. I mean, from the players, Johnny Taves very recently complained about escrow. Well, nobody likes to pay a percentage of their salary, into beefing up the league to the 50-50 hole. But that's the system. That's the reality of it. And the only way to lower it is for the players to, take less or not kick in the inflator on an annual basis and take less, and then you pay less in escrow. But I don't think that you're going to see a full systemic change.
Darren Dreger, Hockey Insider in studio. What's up with Jake Gardner?
Yeah.
When is Jake Gardner going to sign somewhere?
Well, sooner than later, and that doesn't answer your question. I mean, I'd like to be able to say that, it's going to be any time now in the next week. I think that's a little premature. What I've been told all along, dating back over the last several weeks, maybe even back to early July, is that there's a fair bit of interest in Jake Gardner, but because of the restricted free agency paralyzation. A lot of the teams with interest just can't make a move just yet because they don't know what their committed dollars are to that player when that player comes back into the mix.
Would that include Toronto?
I think Toronto would have interest on a real short-term deal, a 1 or a 2 year deal. Look, there's no doubt in my mind Jake Gardner loved playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mike Babcock loves Jake Gardner, would love to have him back on his team. They have to wait to see what's going to happen with Marner. If Toronto were to sign Jake Gardner, and in fairness, I know there's been a lot of speculation out there. As of earlier this week, Toronto wasn't among the group with the interest in Jake Gardner. Not to say that can't change with a phone call from either side. Right. I think there are 3 or 4 teams that are trying to move some money, but as much as it could be the restricted free agent market kind of choking the system a little bit, Jake Gardner was hoping for Tyler Myers type of term and maybe even a little bit more money or along those dollars, around $6 million.
I think he was like number 2 on Frank's list.
Yeah.
But I don't think, and we argued about this, Dregs, like at the end of the season last year, given now not the history with the Leafs, but just his point production, the league is about skating defensemen. I didn't think it was out of the ordinary for Jake Gardner to be asking for 5 years at $6 a year or 6 at $7, something like that. You can ask for it and you may not get it. But I think we all agreed, like, this guy's going to get paid somewhere.
Based on what Myers got, he's as good of a player. He's a different player, but as good of a player.
I agree. I thought, like, a team, I know Edmonton has no money. But, like, if I'm the Edmonton Oilers, I would be looking at, that's what they're dying for, somebody who can move the puck on the back end.
Yeah. The market shifted, though, on defense this year for whatever reason. For whatever reason, it did. All of a sudden, historically, there's always been a premium for a defenseman, especially an offensive guy like Jake Gardner. Maybe the back history, the injury and all that spooked a couple of guys. But for me, maybe that spooks you off for a year on term. And he was looking at a 5-6 year term, I think, minimum, trying to get as an unrestricted free agent, and it just didn't materialize. It wasn't there. Nobody associated with Jake Gardner seems concerned that he's not going to start the season. So, obviously we're running out of time here before training camps open, so it's going to have to be remedied soon.
I don't know if you saw the front page of the Toronto Sun today or the sports section, but I mean, get the U.S. Open going tonight. The Jays are playing opening night of the NFL season, and the Babcock bombshell has to drop. Simmons wrote a piece about him.
I read it. I read it.
And Simmons is not alone. We've been talking about this. Everyone's been talking about it, where Babcock comes into play in this, and Dubas tried to clarify some things with his sit down with Bob, that he had no intention to give off a vibe like they weren't on the same page. I'm not sure how much I'm believing that. But you've known Babcock for a long time. You've covered him. We've all seen him. He's been in the business for 20 years. I don't expect to see anything publicly that would suggest he cares about any of this stuff. But privately, what do you think is going on with Babcock?
Doesn't care. And I say this with 100% confidence and with great respect to Steve Simmons. There is nothing in that column that Mike Babcock would have read and went, never thought of that. I mean, of course he's coming into this season knowing that he was a hired gun. You don't reset the benchmark for coaches' salaries in the National Hockey League and not have to find a way to deliver by this point in his tenure with the team. So if he doesn't move the needle at any point between now and Christmas, would he be surprised if they opted to make an in-season change and bring the promised one, Sheldon Keefe, from the Toronto Marlies to the Maple Leafs bench? No. I don't think he'd be surprised. Would he be disappointed? Of course he would, because it would be a recognition that he didn't get the job done that he was hired to do. But nothing would surprise him if that were the case. Now, he can't be focused on that, right? He's focused on the exact opposite. Steve also talked about Mike having to change and, directed by management. No. If Mike Babcock believes that change is necessary to bring more out of Auston Matthews or this player or that player that is going to result in wins, he's going to make that change. He's not making that change because Kyle Dubas or Brendan Shanahan have him on line one and saying, you got to take the shackles off Matthews, you got to get out of his ear, any of that stuff. No chance.
Well, I'm pretty sure they didn't say keep doing what you're doing.
Well, they can have their opinions. But I mean, like any other developing and evolving coach, if you're resisting change, then you should be fired. But change from who? Because you're directed to change, or because you recognize, as a guy who's been very successful in the sport, that you have to change. You know, the game dictates that you have to change. And I think that would encourage Mike to embrace change more than anyone telling him that he has to change.
I think, you know, he's looking at results too. Like, you're trying to win. That's what, like, I think we're all in agreement. Like, the Leafs are going to be a playoff team. No problem. If they end up with 98 points or 106 points, we're going to say great. But show me some playoff wins.
Right.
Like rounds, you know, multiple rounds. Do something. That's where he's going to be judged on, unless it's an absolute gong show by Christmas or by Thanksgiving or something.
Nothing he's done throughout his career would suggest to allow for that.
Like,
the one thing he does better than anything else is he controls the asylum.
And he's as prepared, from what I hear, because I've never had him, as prepared of coach as anybody out there. And I've had Q, I've had Lemaire, like I've had some great coaches, and you've had some great coaches too. Like there's nothing that suggests that Mike is not there's nothing that suggests that Mike is not going to be prepared and has heard all the detractors. The challenge is to get it out of, and it's not just throwing Auston Matthews out there 22 minutes. You have to have an idea of what you're going to do, and getting more out of William Nylander. And if Mitch Marner's there, which we all think he will be at some point, like, you know, get these guys going and get them playing well. Systematically, that's on Mike. And they're still stressing the goaltender too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, the penalty kill was a disaster.
The penalty kill is going to be interesting.
But there
It's
are
gonna
some
change.
things that the coaches can change.
Yeah. Yes, and the player personnel has changed. I mean, I'm not... If I had to put money on it, I would suggest that this isn't his ideal roster the way it's made up. Babcock, I'm talking about.
I think that's fair.
But he's got to make it work.
Yeah.
And at $6 million, I don't care what you want. I don't care if you would prefer to have the Blues defense. You don't have it.
Yeah.
You better make sure it works with Barry and Ceci and Riley and Muzzin. I mean, those are your guys.
Like, who among us isn't intrigued to see the relationship between Tyson Barrie and Mike Babcock?
Big time.
Yeah. I mean, I like Tyson Barrie. I think he's going to be very effective. I think he's going to be a very influential, impactful Toronto Maple Leaf. But, man, he sees green from one zone through to the other.
Well, if he loves Jake Gardner, why the hell would he have a problem with Tyson Barrie?
Yeah.
Because that Jake Gardner was exactly Scott Stevens out there.
Fair enough.
You're right. And Barrie seems to be, by all accounts, a right-handed Jake Gardner.
Contract year.
Well, he's got to play him. He's going to play him. It's not like he's not going to play him.
But Barrie, I think, is an upgrade in skill on running a power play.
I agree.
Like, Barrie he's pushing more closer to that elite cusp than Jake Gardner ever was.
Quickly, Patrick Marleau, do you think he's going to find a team?
I say no way.
Yeah, you don't, eh?
It's almost like he was like I think he actually thought that San Jose was going to say,
yeah, we'll find a spot.
Minimum wage, fourth line, and they said no.
Yeah. And I like, for him to come back into the league, period. There has been discussions with Edmonton. You know, House of
the family's not going to Edmonton.
Yeah, well, maybe they don't have to. I mean, that sucks. And if it's your final year and you're playing for $1 million or less, but you just want to play, and you want to play with one of the best players, if not the best player in the game, in Connor McDavid, and you got to play for $1 million, like I said, or less, and it means you got to fly your wife and kids back and forth on occasion, then maybe that's what you have to do.
Maybe you should have stayed in Carolina.
Well, I suggested
maybe
this.
They didn't
I was
want
talking
to.
Maybe they didn't.
It may have been a preconceived thing, but you know, if he wants to play, if he's even thinking about Edmonton, then he's conceiving that he's not going to win a cup. But he wants to play and continue his career
and his streak.
And the streak.
I'll tell you, I don't know. Like, Anaheim's up against it too, but why wouldn't that be a fit there? I mean, you know, you've moved out some guys, obviously Corey Perry among them. You know, the guy can still skate.
He can still skate. Well, not everybody wants to just bring a guy in so that he can set the games played record.
But hold on.
That's basically what's going on.
That appears to be the problem, is whether or not he wants to win. Because I would say bring him. No, but I'm serious. I would bring him back here on a fourth line, but I'd tell him, you're playing like 60 games.
Yeah.
Tops.
And I don't think he'd do it.
But let me just, let's take the anything out. Do you think he could score 15 goals next year?
On teams he could, yes, I believe he had, 17 a year ago.
But that's what I'm saying. Let's just say you could get 15 goals out of a guy to make $1 million. To me,
Yeah,
there
you
should
should.
be,
Make a million.
there should
They
be
can't score 5.
But that's
So-
what I'm saying. There should be 5 or 6 teams that are dying for scoring. Like Edmonton would be a great fit for Marleau. They have
Yeah.
no wingers that can
have no.
score.
Yeah, I think he can still play.
But again, and I know personally, like I know a couple of his best buddies actually live in Edmonton. But that doesn't mean the family's going to pack up and move there. I don't even know if they have interest, the Oilers, or they would make it work. It's just, I think if you're just looking at it from a practical standpoint, this guy could score 15 goals for you.
Yeah.
It may not be a fit for the Leafs because the Leafs have moved past that.
Yeah, it's 6.25. Clearly it wasn't.
But
But you're
at
going to get
$1
him on the cheap, and he can still play, and he can bring the
Still skate.
intangibles and good guy Patrick Marleau and all that stuff. But
By the way, I know you got to close. I do have a cat, Minnie. And at 7 a.m., I was 25 feet up a ladder pulling Minnie off the roof of the house.
you have cameras around your house? Please tell me you have video of you up on that roof.
No, we were frantic. And there was a full-on domestic on my driveway.
Yeah.
Because it's an indoor cat, and I was furious as to how the indoor cat got outdoors.
Yeah.
And I had this thing by the scruff of the neck, hanging it. I'm going to get in trouble for this, but
It'll
from
land on its feet.
25 feet. Well, no. So my wife is standing on the driveway with a blanket trying to catch it.
fire-
I drop it.
Yeah. She catches
She
it?
drops the cat,
Oh, no.
slips out of the blanket, and now it's off into the forest. But the cat had been traumatized enough that it realized where the back door was and zipped around the house and was
Waiting
waiting at
for
the back door by the time I got
Are
it.
you offended by the stereotyping that Noodles dropped before you came in here, that just because you're from Saskatchewan, you have a lot of different pets?
Animals. I guarantee you grew up with animals around you.
Lots of animals.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
So is that like everyone in the province has a lot of
Well,
animals?
not if you
Gotta
live
be some
downtown
people.
Saskatoon, you don't have
you're
like a whole farm.
Had an indoor pig at one point. Had a calf that lived in the house for a bit.
I told you.
Had a
Indoor
had a
pig.
fawn because we found it and it almost got gobbled up by the combine. Raccoon,
You had a raccoon in your house.
yeah, and then like a pet. Like
Why would you have a
baby.
domesticated raccoon?
It's a long story, but
Yeah.
lots of
I
rabbits.
told you. I told you. They're animals.
We can go
everywhere.
on and on.
The raccoons in Toronto ain't gonna fly.
No.
If you have a raccoon in your house, you're in trouble.